Hello and welcome to the series. Today we're going to be taking this E30 sunroof, diagnosing its problem, realigning it, reinstalling it, and getting it working like factory. Stand by. Okay, so what we're doing is when we're examining a sunroof on any car, you just want to first start it and run it and see what happens, what's going on. The E30 sunroof is very particular. There are clicks that occur within the motor mechanism right in here, and those clicks are denoted by literal relay cams, cams within the motor assembly that turns a relay on and off, that turns the motor on and off when it's supposed to. So when you completely go back, it stops the motor when it goes just far enough. And of course, when it closes, there's another click. And then when it tilts up, that's another click. So those clicks are related to the amount of rotations that the motor makes and assesses the position of the sunroof. So what we're going to do is we're going to see what is going on with this thing, and then we're going to fix it. All right, so first thing we want to do is key on. Let's just see what's going on with this thing, huh? Let's bring it up first, which means that you want to go forward. Okay, so it stopped and clicked at the right spot. Then it goes down, and then we're going to go backward. So far, so good. All right, so something is jamming up the motor and kind of making it work harder than it has to. You can tell because the motor's kind of gearing down a little bit. It's making it work harder. Close this up. When you try closing, it's almost like it's binding up right here, and it's not pushing that guy closed, so that's something we need to look into as well. That's the first thing that we found. That's the first thing we need to really look into. All right, so one of the things you can see here, when I try closing this, you can see right there, it's literally hitting. See that? So it's almost like this thing is not getting pushed down far enough. In fact, if it was pushed down more, the whole thing would close just fine. So why is it not pushing down hard enough? What is causing this or preventing this from going down further down? And that's the investigation we need to start with. As I close it, just like this. Okay, it did work, it did close. The alignment in the front is a little high and the alignment in the back is definitely low. So we're going to have to make those adjustments here with these torque screws. There's one here, 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 and then on the other side on the rails. So we need to loosen them up, bring them up a little bit, and that will definitely help with the alignment in that direction. All right, so the reason that it's binding up and not going all the way back is pretty obvious, and I think that my customer kind of already knew that, but he just wanted me to find out for myself, which was that he's got the tray still in there, the tray from the slider that goes on the underside of the sunroof, you know, the piece inside that comes up with the sunroof. And I'll show you there. You'll see that black thing that's stretched across from side to side. That guy needs to be removed. So we're gonna have to pull that out, and then we can try again and realign the sunroof and just make sure the sunroof goes in and out when it should, as it should. So this guy is the piece that I need to remove. I just pulled it back out here. And unfortunately, it is in the rails. It's in the rail here. So I can't take it out unless I take the sunroof itself off, which is no big deal. There's 6 screws there. There's 1, 2, there's Torx, there's T25s, and there's one inside of there. I know I had to, let me get some light on it. 1 there, there's 2 there, and then the third one is right there. We take those off on that side and on this side as well, and we should be good to remove the sunroof itself, and then we can take this off because that's on the rails that are being held in by the stainless steel guides on each side. Okay, now we can take this off and replace it. All right, so in order to remove this, we've got this guy here, and this is wedged in between this black bracket and the bottom. So we can't take this out until we move this back and remove this black holder down piece. In order to do that, we need to bring this back a little bit. Then we take this guy, bring it down just like this. All right. Now we can take off this piece. This piece allows us to bring this guy up and over, and then we can remove the gates. So what I like to show you is what requires a realignment is the clicking of the relay at whenever the sunroof closes. So if I were to close the sunroof right here, and stop it right at that click when it's supposed to close, you'll see that this guy comes in and then it comes up just a tiny bit, as if to bring the sunroof in and then prop it up just a tiny bit. Watch. Okay, that was the click. And you can see where this little square piece is. Oops, sorry. See where that little square piece is right there? That little square piece is just over the edge of this bracket right here, just over the edge. But on this side, you can see that it's much, much higher than that edge. So we need to realign this, because what's happening is that there is a fighting of one side versus the other in terms of how the sunroof gets set up and propped. So as it comes up, one's coming up a little bit earlier than the other, a little higher than the other, and the sunroof not necessarily is going to show itself or manifest visually, but it's certainly going to create a tension in there, and that's going to cause some other issues down the road. So it's going to cause sealing issues, it's going to cause motor issues, it's going to cause a lot of things. So we need to take that lower visor off, the front visor panel off, and we need to reset the motor at exactly when that clicks and move those guides and those rails just so they're in the perfect spot. So I knew we'd have to remove this eventually. So the way to remove the visor is to remove these two visors with the Phillips head screws right here, here, and there's one on this side. Then you can take the sunroof switch off. In most cases, you should, this actually wraps around and over, but it's not wrapped here. So I'm not sure why the previous owner did that, but I'm going to look into that to make sure that maybe it's not possible to put it up. Maybe there's not enough material after having done this black headliner, I'm not sure. But we need to take this off. That'll expose the motor, and that'll allow us to start removing the motor and resetting everything. All right, so we removed the visor, and we've exposed the motor, and there are 3 Phillips head screws. There's one there, and then one there. And you can literally take this whole motor off and drop it down. We're not going to do that right now though, but we do have power applied, and we're going to, you can see how the motor moves when you press the buttons, right? And you can hear the relay clicking. That relay clicking is when the dead spots inside the motor are hit, turns the relay off and turns the motor off. But what we want to do is, because we just achieved this, and we found this location here, we're going to set one of them. I think we're going to set it right here. This one's too high right here. This one's just too high. So what we need to do is, when we remove this motor, we're going to be able to set this exactly where we want it, which will move the cable closer, and then when we reset the motor, that reset of the motor will kind of put it exactly where it needs to be. So I'll show you, and we'll remove the motor, and then we'll also actuate it so you can see exactly how the mechanism underneath it and inside of it works. All right, so I'm just gonna let this hang for a second. And if I were to press the buttons, you'll see what happens. So when I press this button, it should click for just a second, because this one actually is getting the sunroof in the detent position up, the tilted up position. And it should only click in just a second. There it is, that's the up position, right? Now if I go back down by pressing this button, it should click again in the opposite direction. Okay, now I'm going to do it again, and you'll see that there's a much longer time, and I'm just going to hold it the whole time. You're going to see that it makes the motor rotate a bunch of times until it clicks again on its own, basically saying, all right, the sunroof is in an all the way back open position now. You can see how it's already indexing this, and it's indexing this until the switch got to the point and closes that blue switch again. I'm still holding the button. So it actually automatically closes on its own. Or opens actually at that point. But we're gonna close the sunroof again, right? We're gonna close the sunroof by pressing the close button, and it's gonna go through its rotations again. Okay, so now the sunroof is in the closed position where we had it before. So you can see here, these guys here, it's gonna be hard to see. Those are the 2 cables that circumvent this gear. And this gear is literally spinning and turning and pushing those cables left and right. Actually, it's pushing one left and one right, and it's doing the same opening and closing mechanism with respect to the 2 of them. So now that we've got this in that exact position, we can move these 2 exactly where they need to be in the closed position, the sunroof closed position, and then we can try it again. So now this actually can freely move back and forth on its own. You got to make sure you move it in the right fashion. In this case, what we're going to do is we're just going to take this and kind of pull it back a little bit. See? I can go all the way, I can go anywhere I want, really. I can go all the way back, and this will start pulling this whole thing back independently of the other side. But I don't want to do that. I want to make sure that it's lined up exactly where the other side is. So I'm looking at the other side. You can't really see it now, but I am looking at the other side, understanding exactly where it is. And I'm going to try to get this guy exactly where it needs to be. So move it around back and forth just to make sure that everything's kind of still free to move. And now I'm going to put that motor back in. I'm going to screw it back in. And when I screw that motor back in, everything's going to kind of be reset in place relative to each other. And any type of misalignment that might occur at that point would be minute. And I can make up for that in the slots that are on the sunroof itself. So when I screw the the T25s into here, I know that it's going to make up for any type of very, very small minor misalignment. All right, so now I've rearranged the motor. Can't really see it too well. I'm going to move this back just a tiny bit. Hopefully that gets both in view here, this guy here, and then this guy here as well. So the idea is that I've got the motor rearranged. I probably moved it one tooth in this direction, kept this one the way I like it because I like the way that that was seated. So if I were to just close it or open the sunroof, drags them down, and now I'm going to close it again, and when it clicks and stops, it's going to hopefully stop in the same exact location relative to each other. Okay, it stopped, and this guy is just a hair above this bracket. This one now is lower, exactly where it needs to be relative to this one. These two are exactly the same. So now I can move on to the next step. So one thing that I noticed, and it wasn't until like at the very end when I realized that there was a gap between the sunroof and the chassis, the entire perimeter. And I'm like, well, it looks like I need, it was some sort of aftermarket seal. I need to get a new seal because it's just not filling in the gap. And I'm also used to seeing like a fabric on the outside, not on the inside. But apparently the fabric is on the inside here, which means that this gasket was put on backwards. So we need to take this gasket off, put it on the right way, and then see how everything seals. You can see on the right side, that's the fabric part, that actually is supposed to be pushed up against the chassis for good sealing. Unfortunately, that is way too wide, and it makes the sunroof a lot wider and longer, and it just doesn't fit. What you need is something like this. Now, if we were to compare the two, so the one on the right is the one that we were using, and the one on the left is the one that we need. So I only have a single small piece of this. I don't have the long piece, so that's the problem. So we need to get a new sunroof gasket before we can move on. Okay, so the new sunroof gasket came in, and I just started installing it here. And you can see the new sunroof gasket right there. There's a new sunroof gasket. And if we were to just compare it with the old one, you can see right there the factory gasket is on the right, and the aftermarket one is on the left. You can see how much wider it is. It also goes deeper. The fact that it goes deeper means that this part here is going to be deeper in, and that's going to prevent the flap on the front of the sunroof from actually closing. It's going to bind up on it. So using a factory sunroof is well worth the money, even though it was an extra 130 bucks. All right, so we got the new factory sunroof gasket installed. And it's a one-piece gasket, and we split it right in the middle here, and we put those two pieces together just like that, so they're butted up right against each other. Then we installed the sunroof, and we have all six M6 torque screws installed, and we kind of, because it's a slot on all these, they're all slots, so we were able to at least get it installed. And then we started exercising the sunroof like this, and to figure out how level it is when you're closing it. And I'll show you what that looks like right now. So right now, it's in tilt up. If I were to tilt it down, it clicks on its own exactly where it needs to be to close. And you can see right in the front, it's nice and level, and in the back, it's nice and level. So you can actually adjust the height of the front versus the back on both sides to make this thing close exactly perfect. And it's more than just an aesthetic thing. You actually need to make sure that it's level so that it doesn't leak any water when it's closed. So there's two different ways to close it. Go in your tilt, and then bring it down, and you can see how it closes. Which, for these older cars, is different than if you were to bring it in from closing it and having it click on its own. It's a little bit lower here, but it's not a big deal. This actually still will not leak. But just for good measure, I like to bring it up, click it back down, and now you know you're good to go. So as you know, I had already installed the cassette, the inner lining here. The inner lining is already inside of here, and we need to install that. Now this is the trick. What you want to do is you want to bring it up. Take the cassette, bring it around all the way, make sure it slides into the sliders, and you want to push this thing as far forward as you possibly can. And now you want to come up. From the back side here is where it gets tricky. You want to bring this thing up and pull it forward. There we go. Now you can take this piece, see how it's flapping up? This piece flapping up needs to sit inside the holders that are a part of the rail system on each side. That's how you get the inner lining to flap up, is because it's being held in there the entire time. So if I were to take this and just kind of like bring it up and then push the whole sunroof forward even more, and then that'll allow us to push the entire tray forward. And here is the ultimate key. Now, I'm going to take this tray and pull it forward as much as I can. Okay. Now, the key here is that there's a metal tray that was part of this inner lining, and that tray needs to be pulled as far forward as possible, because when you close the sunroof, this part of the sunroof, the lip of it, sits inside of that tray and helps to pull not only the sunroof back, but it pulls the tray back as well. So the whole thing is moving at the same pace. What a common misconception that a lot of people make is that they don't make that, they don't account for this getting inside of that. So when you push this in, you need to make sure it's pushed in as far as possible so it sits inside of that tray. So now I'm going to close the sunroof, and now I'm going to bring it down. It sits in the tray and it's pulling everything back. Okay, now I got to look under here, and I got to snap all of those steel snaps into the bottom of the sunroof, because that keeps it held in place as well. And I think we should be in good shape to open and close this thing normally. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Technically, this guy is complete and ready to be closed. Let's bring it all the way open first. And it should snap on its own. Okay, that's an open sunroof. And now as it's closing, you should be able to close it all the way. Might hit it. Yeah, okay, so it hit this. If I were to just Okay, we're like 95% there. We need to figure out a way to get this to push further down so that this doesn't interfere with it. Okay, so what we actually coincidentally had an extra set of these guys, and we put them on, and we just tried it. So let's just close the sunroof here. Closes perfectly. Now we want to open it, close it. There we go. Bring it down. Now I want Dan to demonstrate the differences in these arms because it does make a difference. I don't know if it's a revision, old versus new, or facelift versus non-facelift, but there is a difference in the way that these things are shaped. And I want to see if there's different part numbers on them, but they definitely, if you put them side by side, I mean, look at the shape difference between the two. Look at the angle of one versus the other. I mean, these should be like laying directly on top of each other, and it's not. What that's saying is that the one that we're actually using is a much steeper angle, and what it does is it pushes this a lot further down, and that allows us to, that allows the sunroof to close correctly and not bind up on itself. So I think that this is a success. We've got the sunroof to operate perfectly. In fact, you can bring it all the way down, all the way back, I mean. Dan's gonna put that in and we'll close it up again. Okay. There we go. And it closed, open, shut, does everything. And you can see here that this is fully complete. So we'll have to button that all up, but that's easy. And we are done with the sunroof. Guys, thanks for watching. I really hope that you learned something about how to tune, how to install the E30 sunroof. It's actually not that hard if you just know the basics on how to operate it and how to balance everything out and the right parts to use and the right order of operations. My name is Frank from Garageaholic, and thanks a lot for watching. Take it easy.